Roll for random encounter.
DeathStalker V here, getting ready to view our solo gaming, do an episode on solo gaming. But I'm going to wait just a little while until this weather's over with to make sure we don't have a power outage. But yeah, the Fortress of Doom, watching tornadoes roll by. Hey, hey, hey! So if we survive, we'll see you here in just a little while when we actually film the segment. Look at these cloud formations. I'm not sure how well this camera can pick it up. We've been pounded all day long, guys. And we finally get the break in a lot of the rain. But yeah, it's getting crazy. So they had some tornadoes on the ground around us earlier. But yeah, we're just hanging out. I find weather so interesting. Anyways, we'll wait for things to improve. If we see anything else that's somewhat interesting, we'll try to get it on film. That looks like a spout coming down over there. You guys tired of the weather yet? DeathStalker V here on Channel 2 News. Why not? DeathStalker V here. The Fortress of Doom is still standing. I guess I probably don't make the best meteorologist. Who would have guessed? Okay. So can we get on to, the random encounter show and gaming? Yes, we can. Today's topic's going to be, what were the first solitaire rules for roleplay gaming and when did they come about? To preface this, DeathStalker V, amazingly, got into an online debate with some fellow Tunnels and Trolls fans. And a lot of people credit Tunnels and Trolls for being the first solitaire role-playing game. I like to give credit where credit's due. Okay? The fact is that solitaire role-playing game rules had been published before Tunnels and Trolls was originally published. A lot of people are mistaken because of the adventure modules for Tunnels and Trolls. In fact, I have an original store poster from Flying Buffalo Incorporated, that might seem confusing at first. I'm going to step off camera to get it. Here it is, in all its glory. Solo Adventures. We did it first, we do it best. Beautiful little advertising piece. I know. Why do I have such things? I love it. I love finding stuff like store posters and such. I don't even have anywhere to put them, but I enjoy it. That advertisement doesn't contain a single fabrication. Notice it says Solo Adventures. Flying Buffalo Incorporated, who published Tunnels and Trolls, in 1976 published Buffalo Castle. It was the first solitaire adventure ever made for a role-playing game. It would pave the way for a ton of solos for Tunnels and Trolls, but also games like Fighting Fantasy and Fabled Lands and the Lone Wolf series and such. Choose your own adventure combined with role-playing rules. Some of you may know what I'm talking about. Some of you may be too young. I don't know. But, so I'm not arguing that Tunnels and Trolls did not have the first adventures, but they did not have the first rules. So since I said that the first rules for solitaire play were published, because that's the only way I know to judge who was first. We can say somebody was playing solo role games even before then or something. In fact, there's an illusion that they were. But I can only go off on the official published record. And the fact is that before Tunnels and Trolls even became a published game, Gary Gygax had published in the spring Volume 1, Number 1 issue of the Strategic Review, TSR, a game dedicated to Dungeons and Dragons, less than a year after Dungeons and Dragons had been published, he wrote solo rules for dungeon crawling and stuff to use for D&D. And I do not have that Strategic Review magazine, but I do want to take a look at it. And going through my collection, I do have from 1980 the best of the Dragon and the Strategic Review volumes 1 and 2, and it does include the 2-page article. So let's go over to the table, let's bust it open and take a look and see what was going on. And before I get there, let me go ahead and grab
Sword of Power!
Okay, here it is, the best of the Strategic Review and Dragon magazines volume 1 and 2, released in 1980. I love collecting old gaming magazines. I've done it since the 1990s, digging around and stuff, so I have a pretty decent collection, and I was so happy to find the article in this one when I wanted to make this video. One thing about these older magazines, and this one in particular, that if you like older gaming, the original Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games that's been around, there's tons and tons and tons of great information in these. It's where they could publish rules and such, and gaming conventions and whatnot that weren't available in the normal rule books. This was pre-internet, of course, so this was a way of getting out corrections, extra rules, optional rules, and the news in the hobby. Anyways, this particular one has a lot of great stuff in it for original D&D players, also solo gamers of just about any role-playing game. There's tables and stuff in here that address all kind of unique situations that could pop up in your game. But let's go ahead and pop over to Solo Dungeons and Dragon Adventures, page 66 in this issue. Now, like I said before, this is a reprint. This article is a 2-page article. It is a reprint of what originally appeared in Volume 1, Number 1, the Strategic Review. So here we go. Solo Dungeons and Dragons Adventures by Gary Gygax. Okay, so one of the most instrumental people in getting role-playing games out there and forming the hobby. So we have a lot of gratitude toward Gary and all of his hard work. Also, Dave Arneson and other people that were involved with getting the game out in 1974. Just briefly, I wanted to read something that alludes to something important here. It says, although it has been possible for enthusiasts to play solo games of Dungeons and Dragons by means of wilderness adventures, there has been no uniform method of dungeon exploring, for the campaign referee has heretofore been required to design dungeon levels. Through the following series of tables and considerable dice rolling, it is now possible to adventure alone through endless series of dungeon mazes. I find the most interesting thing in that opening sentence was that it was, although it has been possible for enthusiasts to play solo games of Dungeons and Dragons by means of wilderness adventures. So that alludes to the fact that solo gaming was a known thing even before this article was originally written. Probably in the form of hex crawling, or what I call map crawling, wilderness adventures. But anyways, let's take a look here at what we get all these tables. It's amazing, if you go back and think about the solo hobby, we as solo gamers. A lot of people came into the hobby during the lockdowns and pandemic, COVID-19. And a lot of people think that it's a relatively new phenomenon. No, solo gaming's been around since D&D's been around, basically. The way we normally play using tables and generative sandbox gaming was the way it was presented for the first time in publication. So the things that we use today were things that people like Gary Gygax put out there in 1975, almost 50 years ago. It's amazing to think about it. And this is actually a pretty good dungeon generator. So we have periodic checks, with checking to see what's coming up next. We get doors, side passages, turns, chambers and rooms, unusual shapes and stuff of chambers and rooms, little subtables, numbers of exits, etc. We get room contents without a monster. We get stairs, tricks and traps, gas subtables, caves and caverns for lowest levels, pools, magic pools, etc. Now these it's only 2 pages, but this little bit set up the foundation for the whole solo gaming hobby, in my opinion, because we would see these tables return in a much more grand fashion with the first edition Advanced Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Master Guide. I think that it is one of the most important books to ever be published in the hobby. And it's still what I would consider a solo tool that everyone that enjoys solo gaming should have at their disposal. It was that good. A lot of modern books and stuff copy a lot of things out of that Dungeon Master Guide. But the way it's presented and what is presented, I still use that tool a heck of a lot today, So, but I just wanted to make a quick video to show that, talk about the history of solo gaming, show the first published solo gaming rules. And, yeah, I'll see you guys next time here on the Random Encounter Show.
Hey, this is DeathStalker V. If you like the Random Encounter Show, make sure you're subscribed to our channel so that you'll be the first to know when we upload a new episode. Want to support the show? Head over to Questing Table Studio on Facebook. Let us help you bring your table to life with miniature painting services and terrain.